So we're going to be talking about follow through and overlapping action. Uh, this rig is found in the animation rig section, the pendulum. As with the pendulum, you're going to learn how to overlap and do follow throughs and things like that. But we're going to keep it simple. So for this example, I'm going to set a keyframe on the top of my pendulum. Go out to about, right now I have everything set up to frame 60. I'm going to go out to frame 40, and then on the one axis I'm going to drag it all the way to the other side of the screen. Now note, I am only using the side view in the orthographic view. And one reason I'm using the side view because all I want to focus on is this like 2D plane aspect of this 3D object. So I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to have this move and it's going to stop at that location. Things that we're going to work on is the overlapping aspect of it. So one thing I want to make sure, obviously, is I can't select my geometry. If you want to set up your scene so there's more stuff in there, you can. If you want to turn off the grid, which I like to do, I'm going to do that. Makes my scene a little bit cleaner. So one thing I want to do is I want to grab all the keys, set a key at frame 0, make sure I have a key set at frame 40. Now to keep it simple, these are the 3 keys I'm going to work with from here on out. I'm not going to select or 3 controllers, excuse me. I'm not going to select this controller or that controller. I'm just going to work with these 3. So by example, or by definition, as my pendulum starts to move, these objects are basically dragging behind the main mass. This is more or less the tail, the hair, the claw, things that we speak about that will overlap. So as my pendulum moves, I want these to sort of drag behind. And one thing to keep in mind is as it drags, the lowest or the furthest away from the main mass is going to be the last thing to move. The closest will be probably the first. So about frame 6, I'm going to grab all 3 of my controllers. Oops. All 3 controllers. And then on a rotate, I'm just going to rotate it just enough so it bends. And the idea is to try to keep this bottom portion at that same location throughout the first 6 frames. So it's going to start to drag. As this starts to move, that starts to drag behind. Then as he continues to move, I'm just going to exaggerate just a little bit more so that the force is showing that it's dragging behind and it's continuing to move. So we know at frame 40 it's going to stop. But by definition, these aren't the main mask of it, so it would still be, the force hasn't caught up with that yet, so it would still be in thinking that it's still moving forward and the gravity's still taking over. But once it stops, that's where the overlap will start to happen. So about frame 49, I'm going to put it in the complete opposite direction. And then at frame 60, I'm going to zero my controllers back out to 0 so it's flat. So in real quick, this is in my channel box, rotation X that I was rotating on, throw that to 0. So real quick, this is basically making an overlap action and a follow through, or just more or less a follow through action, because these objects are following the main mask and they're dragging behind, and as the object stops, the body, the rest of the limbs sort of catch up, slightly overlap the original position. Like this is the original position, but they overlap it and come back down. Now, obviously, this is just a quick example of how to make overlap and follow through. The other part of this is now we want to smooth this out just a little bit more, make it a little bit more unique, a little bit more overlapping. So one thing I want to do without driving into the curve editor is we know that this object moves before this one, and then very last this one moves. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to offset my keyframes just enough so that it feels like it's going to overlap even more. So instead, I'm going to leave this controller the same because we know it's going to move practically like right away. It wants to start moving. But I know these 2 frames, I want to have them move a frame after. So I'm going to select these 2 controllers, these 2 controllers, drag select over all the keys in the timeline, look for the middle. Oh, and by the way, I shift left click drag over, And I let go, and then once I have that, I can grab the middle. Oops, I'm grabbing all of them. Shift left click. I'm going to grab this middle portion of it and drag it about 2 frames. Now what I've done is I drag these 2 keyframes ahead so they move. They take even longer to actually move. So once I've done that, now I want to grab this last frame, and I want to select all of its keyframes. Not all of it, it's the ones from in between frame 0 and 60. And I'm going to drag it just a 2 more frames. I keep doing that, sorry. I'm going to drag it 2. If I can get this to work, I'm going to drag it 2 frames more. Now we get even more of drag behind that. And then it starts to form this nice little sway that you get from overlapping your keys. Because not only does overlapping portray to the actual animation, what's happening in the animation as something goes by and overlaps, but it also portrays to what you do with your keys. Because now my keys are overlapping. If I were to open my graph editor, press F. Oops, my controller. I'm going to go panel, orthographic side view. So I had the same view I had earlier. Oops, actually I'm on the wrong one, sorry. It's supposed to be this one. Orthographic side view. Now I'm going to select all these controllers, press F, and you'll see all of the curves. They sort of offset throughout. That's basically that basically means that my keys are overlapping the same way they're actually overlapping in the animation. So now that I got my overlap, there's a few things that obviously I would need to change. At the very top part here, you can see where when my object stops, it's sort of a slowness that happens here. That's stuff that can go in and just start polishing, more or less. Is grab the curve, click on that individual curve, and sort of see where, like, when my object stops. Maybe I want to push this a little bit further here, or tweak it out this way. Just to try to get that motion to look decent. But that is how we would do overlap in a simple form of dragging and follow through. The next big thing, the next step for this would be actually moving the pendulum to have it go down here so it stops and then it starts to move again, and then you see some real overlap in what happens within here. But we'll do that on part 2. I want to try to keep these segments about 10 minutes so you're not just listening to me yap, 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 yap. But that's how the first part of this will work.